Well, it's been a pretty eventful day here in Asia today. Certainly it's all about Trump. If you go to the start of the day, I think you could probably rewind somewhat and have a look at the oil inventory numbers that we got from the American Petroleum Institute. And they came out showing a slightly below par number, and we saw a bit of a decline coming through in the crude complex. Now, people are obviously extrapolating what those weak numbers in both crude and gasoline inventories can mean for tonight's Department of Energy numbers. And people are saying perhaps we could see some slightly lower than expected numbers there. But yeah, slight weakness coming through in the crude complex. And that's been a headwind for equity markets today. We've seen a bit of selling coming through in some of the petroleum currencies as well. And they've certainly hit a bit of a handbrake after the euphoria, after that big pop in US crude and Brent prices, after the agreement between the Saudis and the Russians to extend those output cuts for another 9 months or so. But I think really the mantra today really belongs to Donald Trump. He's getting the party and certainly himself into all sorts of bother at the moment. If you look at betting sites like Betfair, the prospect of Trump being impeached now has increased over 50%. I still think it's a very low probability that Donald Trump will get impeached, but he's doing everything he can at the moment to do so. There's a lot of negative headlines around the situation at the moment. There's been a lot of concern, not just about passing on classified information to the Russians at the expense of the Israelis, and what does that mean for some of the US's allies who are going to think twice now about passing sensitive information to America. People like Holland, the UK, some of the Middle Eastern partners, Australia, these kind of nations will think very much twice about that, and that's obviously going to be upset the national security advisors, the NSA, and obviously the FBI. The other obviously big situation is Trump's involvement with asking James Comey to step out of the Flynn investigation and quieten down effectively, and that's what caused a lot of people to get very anxious today. If you look at the articles coming out of publications like CNN, New York Times, these kind of places, that's what's caused the angst in the Asian markets today. Now, so I don't think anyone is truly betting on that we're going to see an impeachment coming through. The hurdles for that are exceptionally high. If you do the maths within in the House to get the articles of impeachment through the House and both through the Senate as well, they need 66% of the votes. There's still a very high hurdle, but given the news flow at the moment, it's not out of the question that this can happen at some stage. If you look at the reaction we've seen good inflows into the Japanese yen. Dollar yen's pushed down into that sort of low 12 region, 112 region. We've seen some buying of gold. US Treasuries have pushed down a little bit in terms of yields, so good buying coming through there. That's obviously the place which is taking out subtracting the appreciation of the US dollar. The dollar index itself looks horrible on the charts at the moment. If you pull up a daily chart, it's breaking through all kind of key levels at the moment, and that needs to be traded from the short side at the moment, despite the fact that we still think that June's a realistic opportunity for the Fed to raise again. Euro dollar's pushing that 111 region. That's been on fire. That was the big story overnight, of course. We're given a nice platform by Merkel's strong polling in the state elections there, and obviously very strong ZEW or reasonably strong ZEW confidence numbers there. But it's all about the US dollar selling at the moment. It's being driven by US Treasury buying, and the yields coming lower subtracts away from the valuation of the US dollar. In terms of economic data today, well, we've seen some good numbers, or I suppose reasonable numbers in wage data. That hasn't dropped as some people had been anticipating, but at 1.9%, it's still at levels where the RBA are not going to raise rates anytime soon. There's still very, very subdued wage data here. Aussie yen has been the big faller, but against the greenback, it's held in above that 74 handle today. Equities around Asia have been hit pretty hard, certainly in Australia, where the banks have been absolutely savaged. Down over 1.5% as a sub-index there, and that's really driven the market lower. Japan's down a touch because of the yen inflows that we've been seeing, and that market obviously is a big headwind there. China's under a bit of pressure, but the story of the day there is what's happening in steel and iron ore futures, which have rallied very, very strongly. We're seeing a lot of rotation out of financial stocks into mining stocks today. That could be a good place to be if you're in the UK equities today. So look for outperformance there. But overall, it's all about Trump. That's what everyone's going to be talking about for Europe. It's what everyone in the US is going to be talking about. Expect implied volatility to increase. We're already seeing VIX futures up about 6%. That's a trade that's going to continue probably working in the short term here.